Luke Carson arrived at the small Arizona auction yard just after sunrise. The sky was still pale, and a thin cold touched his face as he stepped out of his wagon. He had been on the road since before dawn, hoping to find a horse strong enough to help him with the ranch chores. His old gelding had been injured a few months earlier, and life on the ranch had become slow, lonely, and tiring. Luke didn't talk much to people, but he talked to his animals. Without a horse by his side, his days felt strangely empty. He missed having a companion that understood him without words. The auction yard was noisy, filled with traders shouting prices and buyers inspecting horses. Dust rose from the ground every time someone walked past. Some horses looked proud and confident, others restless, and a few stood quietly, as if already expecting their fate. Luke walked through the rows slowly, studying each animal with patience. He didn't want a fancy horse. He wanted one he could bond with, one that could grow with him. Just as he was about to leave one of the rows, a thin man with a sharp hat and a louder-than-necessary voice tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, cowboy. Looking for something reliable?" Luke didn't answer right away. He had learned not to trust loud sellers. But the man signaled him to follow and led him to a corner where a single horse stood apart from the others. "She's the one," the dealer said proudly, patting the mare's neck. "Guaranteed your money back if she doesn't satisfy you." Luke raised an eyebrow at the strange way he said it. The mare was dusty, thin, and looked frightened. Her eyes were dark and full of worry. She shifted her weight nervously, as if she expected someone to hurt her again. Most buyers would have walked away. Luke could tell she had been passed around too many hands. She looked like she wanted to trust someone but didn't know how. "What's wrong with her?" Luke asked quietly. "Nothing," the dealer replied too quickly. "Just needs a firm hand. She's stubborn. Doesn't listen well. But I promise she'll satisfy you, or you get your money back." Luke stared at her for a long moment. He didn't like the dealer's tone, but he wasn't looking at the man. He was looking at the mare herself. She lifted her head slightly and met his gaze. There was something behind her fear. Something alive. Something still fighting inside her. That look made Luke's decision for him. "How much?" he asked. The dealer named a low price, clearly desperate to get rid of her. Luke didn't negotiate. He simply reached into his pocket, handed over the money, and took the rope gently. The mare flinched when he moved, but he didn't pull her. He let her sniff his hand first, let her feel that he wasn't a threat. Slowly, she relaxed just enough to follow him. The ride back to the ranch was slow. The mare refused to step into the wagon at first, trembling at the wooden ramp. Luke didn't force her. He spoke softly, guiding her step by step. It took nearly 20 minutes, but she finally moved forward. Luke liked her spirit. She wasn't broken, just wounded. A horse with spirit could be taught. A horse with a broken heart needed healing. When they reached the ranch, the sun was already high. Luke opened the gate and led her to the small corral behind the barn. She looked around nervously, testing the fences, sniffing the hay, and twitching her ears at every sound. Luke removed her rope and stepped back, giving her space. She didn't run. She just stood there, watching him with the same uncertain eyes. He cleaned her with gentle strokes of the brush. Each time the bristles touched her, she stiffened, expecting pain. He spoke to her softly, telling her his name, telling her she was safe here. By the time he finished brushing her, her breathing had slowed, and her eyes softened just a little. He gave her fresh water, a bucket of oats, and placed a blanket near her in case the night got cold. As he closed the barn for the evening, he whispered, "You'll be all right now." But the next morning proved how much work he had ahead of him. When Luke tried to saddle her, the mare pulled away, stomping and shaking her head. When he lifted the reins, She backed into the fence. She even tried to kick once, not out of anger, but out of fear. Luke understood the difference. A fearful animal was never the enemy. Fear was the enemy. Each day passed with small progress. She let him stand closer. She let him touch her mane. She ate from his hand. But she still refused the saddle. And each time Luke tried, she panicked. One afternoon, as he was brushing her, a sudden, loud noise from the ranch gate made her bolt. She ran so fast, she knocked the latch loose and escaped into the open desert. Luke didn't waste a second. He grabbed his old, injured horse's rope. It was all he had, and ran for his wagon. The storm clouds were gathering above, wind picking up dust. Tracking her wasn't easy. The desert ground was turning muddy. But Luke knew the land better than most. He followed hoofprints, broken bushes, and disturbed sand. Hours passed, and the wind grew colder. Finally, near a rocky slope, he found her. She was trembling, stuck with her front legs against a crack between the stones. She couldn't move backward without slipping. Luke approached, slowly. "Easy, girl, I'm here." She whinnied fearfully, but she didn't strike him. He placed his hand on her neck, speaking to her with calm words. He didn't pull her forcibly. He guided her gently, shifting stones and clearing space with his hands. After a long struggle, she freed herself. Instead of running, she pressed her head against his chest, shaking with cold and fear. Luke wrapped his arms around her neck and whispered, "It's all right, Spirit." He hadn't named her before this moment, but the name came naturally. She had spirit, more than many horses he had known. The storm broke fully by the time they returned home. Rain soaked Luke's hat and jacket, and the mare's coat was heavy with water. But when she stepped into the corral again, she didn't back away from him. She stood quietly, letting him dry her with a blanket. For the first time, she didn't flinch at his touch. The next days brought more changes. She let him place the saddle on her back without bolting, though she still trembled. Luke never rushed. He talked to her through every step, letting her know she was safe. When he finally climbed onto her back for the first time, she stood still, shaking slightly, but trusting him enough not to run. By the end of the week, Luke realized the truth. He hadn't bought a mere ranch horse. He had taken in a wounded soul. And as strange as it sounded for a cowboy alone on a quiet ranch, he felt less lonely with her around. She watched him with gentle eyes, followed him when he walked, and whinnied softly whenever he approached the barn. Luke often remembered the dealer's strange promise. "Guaranteed your money back, if she doesn't satisfy you." He smiled each time. The dealer had no idea what he was selling. This mare didn't just satisfy him. She filled a quiet place in his life he didn't know was empty. And though the journey ahead would be long, Luke felt something he hadn't felt in months' hope. The days that followed brought a new rhythm to Luke's life. Spirit, as he had named her, had settled into the ranch in a way that surprised him. She no longer trembled at every sudden sound, and she even greeted him with a soft nicker each morning. Luke had learned to read her moods, noticing the flick of her ears or the way she shifted her weight when something worried her. Slowly, he had come to understand that trust took time, patience, and kindness. Every small victory with Spirit felt monumental, and every setback reminded him how delicate the bond between a human and a horse could be. One morning, Luke woke to the sound of rushing water and frantic shouts. The cattle in the lower pasture had broken through a weakened fence after a sudden flood from the mountains. They were scattered across the muddy field, slipping and struggling to find stable ground. Luke's heart sank. He had faced emergencies before, but handling a herd in flood conditions required speed, courage, and the right horse. He knew Spirit was brave, but this would be the first real test of her strength and loyalty. He rushed out to the corral, calling her name. Spirit whinnied back, ears forward, eyes bright with awareness. Without hesitation, she trotted beside him as he ran toward the chaos. Mud splashed over his boots, and water soaked his trousers, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the herd and the mare beside him. When he reached the cattle, some were panicking near a deep water channel, ready to be swept away by the rushing current. Luke guided Spirit closer and gently took control of her movements. She responded instantly, sidestepping rocks, pushing forward where needed, and nudging the frightened cows back toward safer ground. Luke couldn't help but feel pride. Spirit was cautious, yet her instincts were sharp. She avoided the mud pits, moved carefully over uneven terrain, and, more importantly, never bolted despite the chaos. Her trust in him had become apparent. Each time he whispered commands, she reacted immediately, helping him guide the cattle. The neighbor, who had come running when he heard the shouts, watched in amazement. "I thought you said she was stubborn," he called out. After the flood subsided, Luke walked Spirit back to the corral, brushing the mud from her legs and tail. The mare seemed tired, but calm, her head resting gently against his shoulder. Luke whispered softly to her, "You did good today, girl. You really did good." For the first time, he felt they were more than just a cowboy and his horse. They were a team, bound by mutual respect and courage. Weeks passed, and the bond between Luke and Spirit deepened. One afternoon, a traveling veterinarian arrived at the ranch. He had heard about the flood incident and wanted to inspect the cattle. As Luke showed him around, the vet's eyes lingered on Spirit. "I know, that mare," he said, after a long pause. "She's been through a lot. Comes from a rough background. Some owners didn't treat her kindly. That fear you see in her isn't stubbornness, it's trauma." Luke nodded. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed something inside him. Spirit's reactions were not mere defiance. They were survival instincts. She had endured hardships before reaching his ranch, yet she had survived, and now she was slowly learning to trust again. Luke felt a deeper sense of responsibility and a stronger desire to help her heal completely. The days turned into months. Luke spent hours each morning and evening training her, not with harsh commands, but with patience and care. He rewarded every step forward with gentle words, a soft brush, or an extra portion of oats. Spirit responded beautifully, learning new commands quickly, understanding when to stop or turn, and even following him around the ranch without the rope. Her confidence grew, and Luke marveled at the transformation. The mare, who had once trembled at his touch, was now strong, aware, and attentive. One evening, Luke decided to test Spirit further. He led her up the rocky trails of the nearby hills, a route he had taken many times alone. The path was steep, loose with gravel, and challenging for a horse still learning to trust her footing. Partway up, Luke slipped on a loose rock and fell hard, twisting his leg painfully. He groaned in pain, realizing he could not walk back down safely. Spirit stopped immediately, her instincts sensing danger. Instead of running, she stayed close, nudging him gently, as if encouraging him to climb onto her back. With a few careful maneuvers, Luke managed to balance himself and mount Spirit, who walked slowly, steadily, and carefully down the mountain trail. She avoided loose stones, slowed at steep sections, and never once panicked. Luke felt his heart swell with gratitude. This wasn't just a horse he had bought. This was a companion who had saved him. The bond between them was now undeniable. Spirit had learned to trust him, and in turn, she had proved her loyalty in a moment of real danger. Back at the ranch, Luke tended to his leg and thanked Spirit with soft pats and words. She seemed to understand his gratitude, nudging him as he leaned against her neck. The bond they shared was more than trust or companionship. It was a connection born from patience, care, and shared challenges. He realized that buying her had been the best decision of his life. The dealer's promise, the one about satisfaction, had come true in the most unexpected way. Spirit hadn't just satisfied him in work or ranch chores, she had brought joy, companionship, and a sense of purpose back into his life. As the weeks continued, Luke began to notice subtle changes in Spirit's behavior that filled him with quiet happiness. She followed him willingly to new pastures, even exploring areas of the ranch that had once frightened her. She seemed to understand his moods, offering a nuzzle when he was tired and prancing playfully when the sun was warm. Luke often caught himself talking to her as if she could answer, and sometimes he felt she did through the gentle flick of her ears, the soft stamping of her hooves, or the trusting glance in her eyes. The ranch became livelier with Spirit around. Luke's neighbors noticed too. Children who had once watched him work from a distance now approached, hoping to pet the horse or see her perform her new tricks. Spirit, who had been cautious around humans, let them near, stepping lightly, soft eyes watching every movement. Luke smiled, realizing that Spirit had not only healed herself, but had also become a gentle, inspiring presence for everyone around the ranch. Luke often thought about the first day he had seen her at the auction. She had been trembling, eyes wide with fear, ready to bolt at any moment. Most people would have dismissed her, called her stubborn, or walked away. But he hadn't. He had seen something deeper, something that mattered more than looks or reputation. He had seen a spirit that refused to break completely. In saving her from the fear and loneliness she had known, he realized he had saved himself too. Evenings at the ranch became peaceful rituals. Luke would sit near the corral,